You understand that? God has placed you, not just metaphorically speaking, not just figuratively speaking, God has placed you in His family, at His table, and given to you all those things that belong to Christ.
Amen.
Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Hey, Christian! Hey, born-again believer! Do you understand that you are now in the family of God? And everything that rightly belongs to Jesus has been given to you because of your adoptive status as God's child. We do not get where we stand. If we got where we stand, we'd live like princes and princesses instead of living like heathens, instead of living like homeless, instead of living like poor people, instead of living like beggars. If we got where we stand in the family of God, our position beside Christ. Now, do we reverence Christ greater than us? Of course we do. Don't you put Jesus in a higher standard than you put yourself? You better, because He is. But in the eyes of the Father, who makes the decisions, they're right there. Do you get that? In the eyes of God who makes the decisions, in the eyes of God who calls the shots, in the eyes of God who gives the blessing, here's Jesus, here's us. You get that? We are joint heirs with Christ. We have an eternal home in heaven, but we also have access to all the blessings right now. Why? Why did God quicken us who were dead in trespasses and sin? Why were we saved by grace? So that in the ages to come He could show us the riches of His glory. So in the ages to come, He could prove to us, how much we mean to Him. What kind of life do you think Mephibosheth had after that? What kind of life do you think he had before that? Well, we know he still had some servants that were loyal to Jonathan. Not sure exactly how much land they had in Lodabar, but Lodabar wasn't it wasn't a place where there was a lot of money for them, I'll tell you that. What kind of life do you think Mephibosheth had? He was a crippled man. The only living heir to the former king, probably feared for his life every day. I wonder if anybody will find out I'm still here. I wonder if this will be my last meal. Can't really acquire great status, or word gets out about who you are. What kind of life do you think he had after David took him into his house? What kind of life did Mephibosheth have from that day forward? He never wanted for anything. By the way, Saul's lineage lived on because Mephibosheth had a son too. Who knows how many children he may have had, and how many children they may have had, and how many people may still be alive right now that's actually descendants of Saul and Jonathan. Because David showed mercy and grace. You see, guys, we talked about this before, how David was such a good picture of us in his failures, but he's also a great picture of God in the grace that He showed to Mephibosheth. And this one story was placed in the Bible so that we can understand that we are sons and daughters of God. And in so being, God places us at the same status as His Son, Jesus Christ. Which means we have the rights to everything that Jesus has the right to. Preacher, that sounds blasphemous. Well, and I would agree to you, except I didn't say it. God did. God didn't say, Jesus is a 70% heir and you're a 30% heir of everything I have. Did God say that? If God had said that, then Jesus would be up here, we'd be down here. 70-30, 60-40. God said, you are joint heirs with Jesus. Anybody here got a joint checking account? Me and my wife have a joint checking account. Who has access to it? She has as much access as I do, except she don't ever let me get the checkbook. I do not have access to that account. I tell you this right now. But our names are on it. It's a joint account. Does that mean if I've got $1,000 in the bank, I've got as much access to that $1,000 as she has? Yep. I got a signature card on file. They got my information on file. They got my picture on file. If I want to get that $1,000 out, I can. If she wants to get that $1,000 out, she can. She gets it first. I can't get it. But if either one of us want it, it's there. Being a joint heir means everything that's Christ's is ours. And not just when we get to heaven. Because the power of God that rests upon His Son today rests upon us today. We don't have to live like beggars. We don't have to live like homeless people. We don't have to live like people who are distraught and discouraged and have to do without. Well, preacher, I have to work a job, I have to pay my bills. Yes, we all have to do that. That's our circumstance. That's not our status. That's not where we are. Where we are is a son and a daughter of God. We need to start living like it. We need to start acting like it. If you really see yourself as a son and a daughter of God, you will work as hard as you can to please Him for everything He's given you. Amen. Preacher, I don't really realize that right now. I don't really see the benefits of being a son or a daughter of God. I understand I'm free from hell. I understand I'll have heaven one day. But right now it's hard to see the benefits. I will agree with you. I will agree with you. Right now it's hard to see the benefits. That's where faith comes in. You see, if we'd have kept reading in Ephesians a while ago, we'd have seen that we're saved by grace through faith. God's part is grace. Our part is faith. When our part's weak, it hinders us from seeing that His part is strong. But understand me, make no mistake, His part is very, very strong. And I'm going to close with this. Start seeing yourself as a son and a daughter of God. A joint heir with Jesus in the family of God. And start living your life in a way that will please Him for what He's done. You think Mephibosheth lived his life the rest of his days in a way that would please King David? I believe that with all my heart. I believe he was loyal to him. By the way, when David said, "You'll eat at my table from now on, every meal," I don't think Mephibosheth missed a meal. I think every time the doors were open, it was time to eat, he was there. Are we there? Are we there when the doors are open? Do we come eat? When God says, "You'll eat at my table from now on," do we put ourselves in front of that table every time the dinner's served? No, we don't. We don't. Let's start seeing ourselves as joint heirs with Jesus. And let's start living above the crap that everybody else lives with. We don't have to. Yeah, we still have bills. Yeah, we still have health problems. Yeah, we still have issues in our relationship. But we don't have to live down there when God has said your status is up here. If you believe it, let's start living that way. Let's start honoring God by bringing people to church with us, by telling our family He loves them and He died for them. He gave Himself for them so they could also be a part of God's family. Let's start honoring God by giving what we need to give and going where we need to go and doing what we need to do and reading what we need to read and praying like we need to pray. Let's start honoring God and saying, "Thank you for giving me a place at your table. I'll show up when it's time to eat."